Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're watching the show from. Thanks for joining us today. I'll get to the guest in just a minute, but I have a few announcements I want to make. So we have our QuestionPro X Day coming up in October. It's October 26th. We have a great lineup, workshops, and so forth. So make sure you check that out. We'll put a link in the comments. And if you message me or use the code Dan-guest, you'll get 100% off. So make sure you register with my promo code, all right? And we have a very special guest on the show today. We have Michaela Mora, and she's going to be coming on to talk about AI and why it's good, but also some cautions and things we should look for. So without further ado, I will bring her on the show now. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's Michaela, in case somebody got confused.
Michaela. Okay. I always struggle with that. You know that. So
I know. Everybody does.
Okay. Michaela. Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you for coming on today. You're the founder and CEO of Relevant Insights. So maybe start off, give us a little bit about what Relevant Insights is and sort of what your interest areas are in research.
Yeah, so Relevant Insights, we have been in business for 16 years. We are a full service research agency working at the intersection of market research and UX research, doing both qualitative, quantitative, and research, just trying to help clients to make good decisions. Essentially, that has been my whole. I have been in research for more the time than that, so I don't want to date myself. But it's about providing insights to support decision making, essentially, for business. It doesn't matter if it's market research or UX research. That's the role of research, essentially.
Yeah, no, I know that you do it all. So I know we've had conversations in the past about your wide breadth of experience. So that's super interesting. I know today we want to talk about, I think, what everyone's talking about in the industry right now, generative AI, ChatGPT. And really, I wanted to have you on because you provide some good counterpoints, I think some good balance. I know myself, I get excited about all the possibilities and what it can do and getting it into the QuestionPro platform. But I know you're kind of not against it, but you say, hey, hold on a second here. So maybe talk a little bit about that, and then just some potential challenges that you foresee, and like how do we maintain this human connection? And we also have ChatGPT on the back end helping us conduct research.
Okay. Yeah, in our effort to increase productivity and lower cost and deliver fast research, we are inserting AI-powered tools in all phases of the research process, from secondary research to discussion guides and survey design, data collection, data synthesis and analysis, and reporting. And AI can really augment our capabilities in certain stages. I think it's great for secondary research. It can speed up certain types of data summary. However, it seems there is a rush to not just augment capabilities, but to replace researchers in the stages where we have traditionally relied on our capacity for empathy in human interactions, right? We have been adopting remote asynchronous modes of research for years, in which we may chat with participants and never talk to them or see them. But until now, we have at least have some humans involved in the process.
Right.
Designing the questions or probing, and to further based on response we get. Now there is a lot of enthusiasm about letting the tools write the discussion guides and surveys, which we are supposed to edit, but inexperienced researchers may not recognize bad questions if they hit them in the head. We also see companies developing, they're talking about synthetic respondents and developing bots that act as moderators. And if we remove moderators, for example, and rely on bots to run interviews and focus groups, there is the potential loss of empathy and emotional connection.
That's a great point. Yeah.
We know that, for example, in online qualitative research, we lose some of the human touch and emotional connection that comes from face-to-face interactions.
Yeah.
And the level of interaction and energy is different, and we can't observe body language in the same way. We all experienced it during the pandemic. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
The challenge is that the AI power tools may lack the ability to understand and respond to human emotions, which leads to fewer empathetic interactions. And
Right. Right.
I can process large amounts of data quickly.
Hmm.
It will struggle to understand subtleties, the context, the nuance of human interactions, which is why so many people are coming up with a list of prompts to make
Yeah.
it specific. And at the same time, this can become, formulaic and
Hmm.
rigid, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And limit our ability to understand complex and social psychological scenario. And then there is the issue of potential bias interactions, right?
Yeah.
AI
Yeah.
algorithms are only as good as the data they're trained on. If the data is
Hmm.
biased in any way, it can lead to bad interactions. You saw that case. We all know the case of Tay, the Microsoft AI bot that went rogue in less than 24 hours and started
Yep.
spewing many racist and misogynistic
Yeah.
remarks.
Not good. Not good.
Right.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the ethical considerations around data privacy, consent,
Hmm.
potential misuse of personal information, and intellectual property. And that can affect connections not only to research participants, but also to clients who own the data.
Yeah. No, I think you bring up a lot of interesting points, so we can go down a bunch of different avenues. But one thing that's interesting is there's a lot of people getting into using ChatGPT, generative AI, and they're probably unbeknownst to them putting in things that they don't want used in the training model. So I know we were chatting earlier around just training around AI and some of that aspect of it, because people a lot of times they don't know, right? They're just kind of doing the latest trend and putting it in there. So one thing I wanted to dive into was sort of, empathy, and you brought that up. That's something that I don't think ChatGPT will ever replace. I've heard other people refer to it as soul. Like, ChatGPT doesn't have like the soul, then the context that humans have. So maybe talk a little bit about sort of the how can researchers strike a balance between embracing this technology, use it in their everyday life without losing that empathy or that soul that we all want, right? We all want it in these human connections, and as researchers, we're no strangers to that. So, where's the balance here?
You know, uh, you're correct. We all want deeper connections, right?
Hmm.
And the pandemic again made that very, very clear and surfaced a lot of mental health issues that
Hmm.
isolation brought to the surface. We are a
Right.
social species, and
Yeah.
technology is interfering with our nature on many levels,
Hmm.
solving some problems but creating others. So the jury is still out on whether the trade-offs are worth it.
Right.
I wonder if we are repeating what happened with fast food. We trade off nutrition for
Oh,
convenience and
interesting.
lower cost.
It's interesting. Yeah. Good point.
And now we are plagued with many health issues connected to changes in our diets
Yeah.
for over many years. So we must balance the need for efficiency the AI may provide, and the
Hmm.
value of human creativity and
Hmm.
intuition and emotional intelligence in
Hmm.
research, right? Those are the nutrients for our
Right.
souls. And
Right.
we need to identify complementary roles instead of outsourcing everything to AI. And
Yeah.
AI can, again, process large amounts of data and identify patterns. But data, as we know, is not the
Hmm.
same as insights.
Yep.
And humans are great at empathy and creativity and understanding complex nuances of human interaction. So we need to recognize the limitation of both. We can use AI to streamline processes, but is this means removing humans
Hmm.
and making the process less meaningful for other humans?
Hmm.
Then the fact that it can be done, it doesn't mean that it should be done, right?
Yeah, that's a good point, right?
Because human collaboration still our secret power for survival.
Right.
And,
Right.
if you just think at a simple term, we don't have to go very complex in advance.
Hmm.
Just
Hmm.
think of customer service as a
Yep.
simple example. You know,
Yep.
I do both. I wonder how many times you have got a good answer from a chat bot or an IVR phone
Hmm.
system where you try to
Hmm.
reach someone and they can
Right.
never answer your questions, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's
And
true.
that's being a waste of time for you, efficient for them, but very wasteful for you,
Hmm.
right? As
Yep.
a customer. And
Yep.
I do, like I said, I do qualitative and quantitative research. And as a qualitative researcher, I moderate focus group. So a recent project, I used a facility provider that also did the participant recruitment. And the only way to communicate with the recruitment side of the business was via email.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So not even the facility had a
Yeah.
phone number for the recruiters, and they supposedly are from the same company. So if you go to the website, there's no phone number to be found. And
Wow.
so we had an emergency situation, like it always happens in this type of
I mean, it's
project.
typical in those projects, right? Like something always happens. Yeah, for sure.
And it actually was a common thing, but still. And we needed to substitute some participants. And we had less than 24 hours until the session. So we were panicking.
Yeah, for
We
sure.
couldn't find some participants. We needed to change them. But the setup of the criteria was a little complicated. So discussing the problem on the phone was faster
Yeah,
than
well, that's
writing.
true.
The
Yep.
writing in an email, because it was a complicated setup. And
Yep.
I have to send repeated emails asking for a phone number, and nobody responded. I have to really push the facility to get someone high up to contact me. And somehow my screens reached the top, and suddenly I got a phone number, and the following emails started to show a phone number in the signature. There was no there before.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
They were not there before. So they made it very efficient for them to avoid the cost of phone calls, but not for me as a client.
Yeah. I think it's interesting though, because in that case, I would say that emails were actually less efficient, right? Because if you just had a phone number, you probably could have settled it in, 5-10 minutes. But the amount of time you had to spend, they had to spend reading emails. And I've noticed this even on, when we use Slack internally, and we, Slack back and forth, and finally it's like, why don't we just jump on a call? So it's like going back to like the old methods, in quotes here, but honestly, it helps out a lot of the time. Sure, it's great, and a lot of things can be handled over email or Slack, but having that human connection and chatting and hearing voices and just hashing it out definitely goes, a long
It's
way.
idea augmentation or replacement. So okay,
Yep.
we can solve certain type of questions and
Yep.
problems via email or a chat box, but you cannot exclude a full channel just because you cannot foresee all the potential more advanced and complicated situations that can come up. The clients still need to call, and rarely, if I really need to call, it's because it's something that I know is not going to happen
Yeah.
via email or chat. Or I try to avoid calling actually, but you have to give me the option. And
Sure. It's true. That's true.
and I prefer to work with partners with who I can make a human connection and who are there for when I need them. And so the same happens. So an industry who has our bread and butter is talking to people and relating to others and trying to understand customers, you cannot remove the human element, neither for the clients and for your partners. You have to have humans. And I know there is a pressure to cost cutting and delivery and all that, but you're going to make it worse. In the end, the customer experience is going to be, degrading pretty quickly if you just wanted to outsource everything to technology.
So do you think it's a good way to look at it to, use ChatGPT or generative AI, AI, putting it all kind of under the same umbrella, like use that for sort of mundane, like everyday tasks, and then that frees up your time for maybe more kind of strategic thinking and getting those insights? Is that do you think that's a good way to look at it, or what would you say to that?
Well, right now the way I have experimented and tested several tools, and what
Yeah.
I'm seeing right now, what is it now at this stage, is
Yeah.
it's very good for probably secondary research. You still just need to check your sources.
Yeah.
And I was really hoping, for example, in the area of qualitative research, that it will solve the issue of time and cost of transcriptions.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But I'm disappointed with automatic transcriptions because it's an area that could really augment capabilities at a lower cost if done well, but the quality is often so poor, particularly if you have a different English accent like me. So you see immediately the bias, right?
Yep.
Those models that do the automatic transcriptions are trained on people who speak a certain accent, an English accent, right? If you have any type of deviation from that, the tools get a little crazy. They don't know what you're saying. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for me, some tools don't even separate my voice from male voices.
Yeah, you're right. You're 100%. Yeah.
And also, I can see the potential power to synthesize large amounts of qualitative data. I have tested too,
Mm-hmm.
and I found then that I need to spend a lot of time checking that I didn't miss any big points, because I
Got
don't
it.
know where the local optimum is for the models. If you know
Right.
modeling and statistics, you know that it's all
Mm-hmm.
about where you find that clustering optimum.
Yeah.
And it's still, still need to go through the traditional process of reading the raw data,
Yeah.
letting my brain search for unexpected insights, and provide input for creativity when I try to connect the dots across the thing.
Right.
So the mundane depends what type of mundane activities
I
you
guess
are
that's true. Like it's kind of relative,
trying
right?
to put. Yeah.
So yeah, but I think to your point, you bring up a great point in terms of just is it missing anything? And if I have to go back and check it, maybe it's just faster than transcriptions, for example. If I just kind of make sure that it's done right, and I think that's a great point because you don't know, right? You're kind of putting it into this sort of black box, and I think until we can trust it a little more. I mean, we were chatting before the show, and it's only it's relatively new, and researchers have really adapted it, whatever you want to say, and it's 6 months, 7 months old. Companies are still trying to figure it out. I know as a software development company, we're trying to figure out how to best integrate it and get it to market. Researchers are trying to maintain a balance. So it feels like it's been around for years and commonplace, but it's 6 months. So that time to like adoption has really sped up with I think ChatGPT, really exploding on the market, I should say. So it's kind of an interesting point that we were chatting about there.
Yeah, the pendulum has really swung extreme to the other way. And I was telling you that 20 years ago, when online qualitative tools came to the market, there was a lot of resistance, and
Yeah.
many of the qualitative researchers, they didn't want to get into that because they were talking about the loss of emotional connection, the in-person relations, and all that. And it took them a while to realize that it's needed. The pandemic also forced them to jump onto the quickly for those who still were not accepting that.
Right.
And now it feels like, we better not wait.
Yeah, that's true.
We might be left behind.
Yeah.
And so now you go to the other extreme and you try to adapt it too quickly. And I was at the QRCA conference this year, and I was amazed that the biggest sessions were about AI. And I appreciate the interest, and I think everybody's trying to figure out how to do this because it takes a lot of work and time to do qualitative research at scale. Quantitative is relatively more kind of given, but qual is it's a little harder. And so people's trying to figure that out. But then if you go to extremes, no extremes is ever good in any category of industry. Never is extremes are good. You're going to be solving one problem, very small sometimes, and very limited, and then you're going to create huge other problems. Then now you need to add up onto. So now you have to create safeguards, and you have to create things so things don't go bad. And so how much time and money are you really saving if you have to create all this fencing around? And so you can say, well, if you put a script in ChatGPT, in the public version, you are really using your customers' data, your clients' data to train the model. The client's not going to like that. Okay, well, let's go and buy a service that kind of puts a fence around it, and supposedly it's not feeding the model. It's in pain. So now you have an added cost. Now you have to pay for this other tool. You have to pay for the fence.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So instead of increasing efficiency, you're actually decreasing it and increasing costs instead of decreasing costs. So you have the inverse relationship there. So
and you have the same thing like for sample, right? The sample, programmatic sample, everything got expanded, and now you have to spend time in calling fraud.
It's true.
And so you're solving one thing and creating others that you don't know yet what are the unintended effects and the cost and timing, and also quality. Quality is one thing that nobody's talking about that.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. So we've mentioned some concerns. Now, let me know, like, what areas are you excited about, like the possibility of AI? I mean, maybe look forward, like, a year, 2 years in the future. What areas are you like kind of interested in, or do you have your eye on it? I know you mentioned, qualitative and maybe some advancements there. So is that the area you're kind of most interested in, or what would you say?
I think that's where there is a lot of I think in terms of optimization, there is
Hmm.
a lot of that because in the quantitative side, you still there is a lot many modeling. There's always been part of that when we start talking about big data.
Hmm.
There is a lot of tools already doing that. I mean,
Yeah.
the AI models they are now being explored. It's more the language-based models, right? So those are the
Mm-hmm.
ones where there is a potential. The all the other those models are probabilistic models. So there is
Right.
modeling behind many of the quantitative studies that we do too, right? And that you need that, and it's a statistics. You can call it whatever you want, but it's just a statistics.
Yeah, for sure. It is. Yep. Yep.
And what they call machine learning is just a bunch of algorithms. Algorithms are statistical models. You have a lot of regression models, neural networks, and correlation.
You're
There's a
really
lot of
you're really
statistics
you're
behind.
pulling back the curtain here, aren't you?
Yeah, there's no magic. And there is also it was a recent article in the Atlantic about the dark side of these models. Right,
Mm,
we have the illusion that this model is doing the thing on their own.
mhm,
Right, there is a cottage industry behind all those models. A lot of low pay workers
mhm,
checking those models and checking the definitions. They're not well paid and they don't have the training. They
mhm,
don't have a lot of time to really, if you come back and say, this is the concept of a whale, and that person checking, is ChatGPT having the right concept? They have to go
mhm.
on sources to check if that concept is right.
Right.
By their own admissions, they don't have time. There's too much information that they need to process. They don't
Mhm,
have guidelines. And so how much bias is that being inserted in those models that we think that you press the button and ChatGPT is going to give you the answers? We don't know either. And
right. Right.
companies that are doing that, OpenAI and Meta and all that, they don't want to
Mhm,
talk about that.
mhm. That's
And so
true. Yeah.
those models need to be trained by humans. The question is who is training them and
Mhm,
how well prepared are those trainers? And
mhm.
they call it the model raters, right? They call
Right.
it trainers, and that's the thing that nobody wants to talk about. That
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, everybody wants like the kind of the rosy picture, and this is what it's going to be. But I think there's a nice balance, right? You need to have the innovation, the progression of AI. But I think it's also good, like we're doing here, to take kind of a step back and look at the other side of it and say, hey, what's actually behind this? What are some of the cautionary things that we need to keep in mind? So you've obviously done your homework on this. You know a lot about it. If, let's say, I'm a researcher and I'm kind of dabbling in ChatGPT, I want to know more about it. What would you recommend as some resources, some training for some of these researchers looking to just find out more about it, both the good and the bad?
I, well, right now there is no like official sources. You're gonna have to go around and read a lot of
Yeah, that's true.
articles and listen to the founders of those tools talk, and you have to listen to both sides.
Hmm.
And I know there's in our industry there is a lot of talks about this, but it's a lot of hey, yay, yay, we go,
Hmm.
we go, we go, we go. And the other side is every time I try to say something, it's like, nah, but it's gonna be better. No, but it's gonna. And I have been for too long in this industry to be a little skeptical.
Yeah, no, it's good.
And so for the new people coming here, be informed, follow both pros and cons, but just don't get lulled into the illusion that the AI is going to be doing it all for you. Researchers
Mm,
need to drive the process. They need to be the ones designing the questions, asking the questions, responding to. They need to
yeah,
work in diverse teams to
yep.
avoid experiential blindness and
Mm,
lack of empathy for people. I mean, no tool is going to solve that,
right,
right?
right.
And
So,
research can be
yeah.
well designed and the data can be accurate, but the researcher can bias the analysis and interpretation. And this is sometimes is a an argument used to say, well, give the upper hand to AI. But AI
Yeah.
is not a solution to avoid bias and
Yeah.
analysis, because the AI models, as I said, can be also biased. And we wouldn't even know the solution to bias mitigation is to work in diversity with people from different backgrounds, demographics, values,
Yeah.
and skill sets. And you needed to minimize blind spots, and both in both the research design and the analysis. And as for the role of AI, every time you get those tools, the question you have to ask is, what type of data was used to train this model?
Mm-hmm.
To handle this type of data specifically, not any type of data, the data they are trying to collect and analyze. Because AI right now is a black box for
Yeah.
many of us, and it's hard to evaluate how good of a job it does in analyzing a topic if we are not experts in it to spot errors and bias. And the idea of, the what they call it, the illusions, the things that AI sometimes generates, it could be funny sometimes, and it could be really serious. I had someone who contacted me. They say I show up embarred as an expert.
That's good though, right? I mean,
No, but see, as an expert in the type of research, I have never in an industry that I have never done any type of research.
Wrong. Yeah, it does. I've heard stories like that too, so that's funny.
It was kind of like, what? It was a very thing in the animal kingdom that I suppose I'm doing research with this type of animals. It's like, nope.
No, that's wrong kind of research here. That's funny. Oh man. Well,
So what I'm telling people is keep your critical thinking going. Don't just let it go.
Yeah, I think definitely that's what I'm hearing from you is read what's out there on both sides, but take it with a grain of salt, do your own research, and really kind of get like what's behind the articles here. And but there's a lot of information out there, but to me it sounds like maybe you can kind of teach a class on this or do some training with people, because I'm sure they'd be interested in hearing what you have to say. So
I need to think about that.
yeah, that'd be good. That's good. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on today. I really, really appreciate your time and insights. And we'll have to do this again in 6 months and see where things are at. Maybe some things have gotten better, and and maybe you're kind of interested in some other areas. So we'll definitely do this again. I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much. Great questions, Dan.
Awesome. Thank you.